money in the funding referendum, we are still, I don't think, meeting the spirit of what class size was supposed to be originally. So I just wanted to make that point.
Yes, ma'am.
My last thing is that even though I did vote for the budget, I did not agree, and I still don't agree with attritioning paras. And that's, again, something that our funding referendum has helped us with. But not enough, apparently, because we're still attritioning paras. And I say this not just from my own experience, but from hearing from teachers that have done it a million different ways, sharing paras, having no paras, having a dedicated para. And I have yet to hear from one person that does this for a living, or parents too, that think that it's a good idea to continue to attrition paras. So again, thank you very much. I'm glad to see that Ms. Kidwell, our Director of Exceptional Student Education, is still really working hard to make sure that our students with special needs are being well met.
Absolutely. We work very closely together on a weekly basis. Yes, ma'am.
Sir, can you answer?
Yes, ma'am. Superintendent.
Chair Cummings, thank you. To answer your question, Board Member Browning, I initiated the process when I arrived. So yes, I support this. And the reason for that, and I want to take a moment to thank the team, district level, but especially our principals, because something I realized very quickly is that we didn't have site-based budgeting. And the reason that is really important to understand is because if we really want to reach all students, we need to provide the opportunity for our school teams to make the decisions that are best for their students. Those needs, excuse me, those needs vary from school to school. But not only do they vary from school to school, but they may vary from year to year, depending on the students that they're serving. So providing an opportunity for that flexibility within this framework assures that we can reach every student. And we're not fully there yet. We're still working on more and more of that site-based budget, but this is year 2 in that process, and we are committed to doing that. So we appreciate the input and the feedback from our school teams. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Vice Chair.
I just wanted to echo something that Board Member Thrower had mentioned. I too agree with the PE and lowering those numbers, and I too agree that wanting to continue to, I'm going to use the word massage those numbers year after year in observing PE classes and understanding what that looks like. Some of those students all come to, there are 3, 4, 5 classes coming to PE at one time, and it's wonderful to be able to have 2 PE teachers and a tech, and they can all be doing the same thing or doing different things on different parts of the field, and it just gives the students a more well-rounded physical education experience. And seeing that we are going to be increasing staffing for those larger schools, and as you noted, Mr. Green, we have at least 2, maybe 3 who are already at that level. What those PE teachers, and I guess right now 1 PE tech, are being able to navigate with the large volume of students, I applaud them for the work that they're doing now, but also grateful that we're looking to ensure they have help in the future. And still, a class size of 75 in a PE class is still a rather significant number. We're certainly having all of those teachers who have those elementary school students who have class sizes at 18 to 25-ish, depending on, as you also noted, that class size is based on an average, depending on those numbers, and 3 classes all converging on 1 teacher. We wouldn't do that in any other special, I guess you could say. I mean, maybe we're doing that in art and music. Those are very, very different than when you're doing activities that are exerting energy and balls throwing through the air and different things like that. So I too want to echo Board Member Thrower that as we continue to look at this year after year, and understanding that physical education is such an important facet for these students where they're able to exert that energy, and the legislature has said that we need to have physical education and time for our students. So we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can, that every student's going to succeed, not just in the classroom, but also on the physical education field and court.
Yes, ma'am. And if I could just add one point of clarification. When we talk about the 3-class model or up to 75 students, that is based on 2 people out there, a class and a half each. So It's certainly not represented to mean one person for 75 students. Should be 2 per 70, which is still large, yes, but just a point of clarification.
Thank you for that. That's still 30-plus students per teacher, depending on how that looks. And
Yes,
and we
ma'am.
don't have other elementary school classrooms, I don't think, that are that large. So,
Yes, ma'am.
but thank you for the
Yes.
clarification.
Yes.
Ms. King, do you have anything? Thank you. I wanted to go back to something Ms. Thor said, and I just asked her for clarification. You said, we were talking about the class size, kind of massaging it, that you can use different templates of trying to come with the class size. You said school grade, school-wide
School-wide average,
average. Are they using any other average? Are they using school grade average, meaning all of the 4th grade or all of the 3rd grade?
So that's a great question, and I do have 2 responses for you. First off, elementary seems to be the focus. So in elementary, when we talk about school-wide average, it's K3, because that's the 1:18 ratio, and 4-5 average. However, this year, because of COVID and spacing and things of that nature, we have adopted, the chiefs and the superintendent has adopted a per grade level average. And so whereas in the past, perhaps we would add up all the K3 numbers, divide by 18 and say that equals 10 teachers, we look at all the K numbers, divide by 18, and that's the number of teachers that they were provided. So it's actually in favor of the schools this year. We did not look at school-wide average, we looked at grade-wide average to make sure to keep that at
Thank
18 or below.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that, because you said
Yes, sir.
school grade. I mean, you said school-wide, and I think we need to make sure that we're saying it is school grade level, grade average,
We did grade level this year, yes, sir.
grade level average. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
What about middle and high school?
That is truly a school-wide average, a 6A and a 912 average, because there's no delineation of class size. It's 1 to 22 and 1 to 25, unlike elementary, that delineation stops from 18 at 3rd and goes to 22 and 4th and 5th.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Any public comment? Any public comment? Thank you, Mr. Green.
All right, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Moving forward with our agenda, next item up is our 1 meal referendum. And we had some very spirited discussion at our last work session concerning if Marion County was going to ask for another referendum on this year's ballot. So we have someone that's going to give a presentation.
We do. Thank you, Chair Cummings. And while Ms. Boston Ellis is making her way up, I'm going to provide somewhat of a framework for what we're going to present to you this morning. We are going to begin with, as you see, that is attached, our quarterly report that we provided to the ICROC, which is the Independent Citizens Referendum Oversight Committee. And the last quarterly report was conducted in October. So you're going to see what we shared at that quarterly meeting on the referendum. And so we'll start with that, and then we'll work our way through the questions that you have asked of us, and we'll entertain any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Chair Cummings,
Good morning.
I'm shorter than Brian. Chair Cummings, Vice Chair Campbell, board members, Attorney Powers, Dr. Gullit, and Ms. Prestipino. Good morning.
Good morning.
As Dr. Gullit stated, we ingested and digested all of your comments from the last work session, put our heads together, and this is not a Teresa show. This is, I brought a few friends with me to help continue your discussion on the 1 meal referendum. As Dr. Gullit stated, we are looking at the last quarterly report, which was as of 9/30/2021, and then we will integrate information about all of the programs that this referendum funds to the benefit of our community and those that are watching. Our report, as you've stated, has been given quarterly to the ICROC committee, a committee that is designed and created by the board members. I believe you picked 2 and an alternate. So every quarter, we get together with that committee and we discuss not only the budget, but also actual activities that have occurred since the last time we met with them. So we'll get started. As you can see, in the beginning, the 1 mil referendum started in the year of 15-16. And I'll digress to the first referendum because that's where it all started. The first one included everything that you see on this particular slide, with the exception of Safe Schools. Safe Schools was integrated into the second approval of the referendum. So as stated here, it includes costs to restore art, music, media, physical education, to help meet class size, retain state-certified teachers, paraprofessionals, and school safety. You can see that on the slide, it provides all of the revenue that was generated from the mill, as well as the actual expenditures. And in the last year, 2021, that is the current budget that we are working under. What I'll point out to you is that this is an operational referendum, so that we cannot use this referendum for things such as maintenance or construction. You'll notice also that the revenue in this current year budget is a lot lower than the expenditures are a lot lower than the revenue by about $2 million. And I'll get into more detail when we discuss fund balance, but it is also, as Mr. Green mentioned, that in our process of attritioning different units out. And if I could pause right there and talk about in the first year, 15-16, we started out with about 300 staff units. And through growth, those units went all the way up to about 468. And so we started attritioning about 2 years ago. I think at the peak of it, we had 170 kindergarten paras, and those are the units that are being pretty much attritioned out. We also had PE techs that were not there early. And there are some other positions that have been added based on Florida statute requirements, or it was a board concern or the administration at that time. So there were additional units added along the way. Again, this is as of 9/30/2021. As you can see, the budget was $23.6 million. And also, we had only collected about $27,000 at that time. Again, the 1 mil referendum is based on property taxes, so we do not see an incline in revenue or an increase in revenue until taxes begin to be paid. This year, we started receiving property tax allocations in the month of December. And you'll also see that we had spent $3.1 million by the end of September. So that's why it is important to maintain and have that fund balance to cover those expenditures while we await the distribution of property taxes. This represents the revised budgeted expenditures. The largest amount is $9.2 million. That's where we have the class-sized teaching units as well as where we have paras. So class size, as we've discussed earlier, is tied to the constitutional amendment that was approved many, many years ago. Also, the paras are included because they offset the teacher to adult ratios in some classes. And so forth, physical ed, vocational, media, art, music, professional development, and safe schools. Again, as I stated previously, we started out with about 300 staff paid out of this funding source. Where we are now, we have budgeted 344 approximately, but we have actual about 327. Again, this is just a pictorial of all the expenditures by program for every year, with the exception of the 21-22 year, and that is basically expenditures as of 9/30/2021. So we'll talk about fund balance again. Our ending fund balance for the 2021 year was $5.5 million. Our budgeted revenue was $23.6. Our budgeted expenditures was revised to $21 million, and we're projecting an ending fund balance of $8.1 million. Why fund balance is important is because we do not receive our property tax revenue until the end of the calendar year, basically. So the fund balance is used to cover those expenditures that occur through the time of beginning our receipts of revenue. This year, through October, when we started receiving our funds in December, we had exceeded the fund balance. So in November, we exceeded our fund balance of $5.5 million. At that time, the general fund covers those expenditures, and then when we start receiving the revenue, then it goes back to referendum. So it's really important to maintain a healthy fund balance. So we'll start talking about the programs and why we're all here, and we have to continue to maintain our focus on why we're here, and that's our kids, and maintaining a healthy environment that is conducive to learning. So for the detail, our class size units, we originally budgeted 75, but as Mr. Green stated, because of COVID and because we were looking at doing class size by class in the elementary, we increased our budget for class size up to 105 for teachers. We have actually 99 teachers. For paraprofessionals, we had an original budget of 110, and then it was revised down to 100 based on attrition. What I will point out to you is the staffing plan drives everything. So if a school has, if the schools have a need for increased number, then those units are added to the school. So as of 9/30/2021, we had $954,000 in salary and benefits to the total of $417,000. What I might add is, you may recall many, many years ago, decisions were made by the administration to not meet class size because the cost of meeting class size was greater than the penalty that we ended up paying. So those are the kind of hard decisions as board members and administration that we will always be forced to make those choices. So we were ecstatic when the referendum came about and allowed us to increase class size in conjunction with the constitutional amendment.
Ms. Boston-Ellis, how long did we pay that penalty for not meeting class size? Was it 1 year?
It was more than 1 year. I'm not really sure of the exact, but in our final budget document, there is a page on that, and I can get that to you that actually shows what years we paid a tax on. The largest was around, I believe, $1 million.
Right. That we paid back for not being in compliance with
Yes,
the class
sir.
size. Thank you.
So we'll move on to the fun stuff, and for this, I'll bring forth Jen Beck, who'll talk to us about physical education.
Before you go, you told us how many actual teachers we have.
Yes, sir.
Do we know how many actual paras we have right now?
Yes. That is 98 as of 9/30/2021.
Thank you.
All right, good morning, and I'm so pleased that Mr. Green was talking about physical education this morning because that's one of the topics that I get to talk to you about. And the pictures that are on the screen are actually our physical education teachers receiving some ongoing professional development earlier this year to really expand and to elevate their teaching practices. And the reason you see these pictures here is because it really truly is the physical education teacher that is the heart of the PE program around our district. And referendum funds have helped to restore our PE programs to what we currently have today. Our physical education teachers allow our students the opportunity to be active and to be engaged during the time that they are outside. As Mr. Green mentioned, Florida mandates at least 150 minutes of physical education per week, which typically averages to about 30 minutes a day in grades K-5. Therefore, school master schedules have to reflect those minutes. And having our PE teachers and techs in place ensures that we are meeting this mandate at all of our elementary schools within the district. Physical education teachers get our students active, they are connecting skills to standards, and they are ensuring safety and supervision when in many cases they're outdoor learning environments. Referendum funds have also helped to provide equipment that has to be replenished on a reoccurring basis due to just normal wear and tear. This could be anything from balls and nets and cones and rackets. Referendum funds provide elementary PE programs $2 per student. The goal of all physical education programs is to increase a student's moderate to vigorous physical activity when they are outside. To do that, students have to have something in their hand, whether it's a ball, a bat, a racket, so that they are participating truly during practice time and not just waiting for a turn. PE is not the same as free choice, and it is not the same as recess. It is instruction to the standards. That is why it is so important that we have PE programs at our elementary schools that are well-staffed with PE teachers and techs, and that they have resources to keep our students active so that brains are turned on when they return back to the classroom.
Ms. Beck, do we have, on that PE, do we have the actual numbers currently in those positions? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. On the slide, page 11, you'll see that we had originally budgeted 17, and we have actual 16 PE teachers to accommodate the 150 minutes that are required by Florida statute. For PE technicians, the original budget was 24, and the actual is 23. And I think it was stated earlier that the PE techs were not there in the beginning. Correct. These were added when the legislation changed and as classes in our schools got larger and larger for PE. So PE techs were an addition to that. Also, it has to do with safety, and that's what we wanted to bring to your attention. So this budget of $2 million includes the costs of teachers, PE techs, and the $2 per student for equipment for our students in elementary.
Chair Cummings?
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Ms. Bostonell says, sorry. Just to be clear, we're talking about elementary PE only, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
This
so,
is restoring, we restored the elementary teachers back to the pre-recession, but we have added PE techs along the way from the 15-16 year to now. We've added PE techs in classes or schools that are larger.
I see. And are we currently mandated by the state in any way regarding numbers for secondary, middle, and high school? Because we all know that fitness needs to be lifelong, and I honestly, I can't remember if we have any current mandates.
Current mandates for PE for secondary.
Okay, so yes, actually, HOPE, which is health and PE combined, is a graduation requirement for our high school students. Some of them do take it through virtual class just to be able to create more space in their schedule to access more advanced level courses, but PE is still a graduation requirement.
Can you repeat that, Mr. Whitehouse?
Certainly, so you guys hear me now?
Better.
So HOPE, which is health and PE combined, is a graduation requirement for our high school students as part of their 24 credit graduation standard diploma. Some of those students do take it on virtual school because they try to create more room for other electives, but PE is still very active in our high schools for certain.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. Yes, my youngest son did HOPE online, so I'm familiar with that. But what about numbers for actual in-person PE?
Well, it varied by school, and I don't really want to speak to that without actually being able to give you factual numbers, but I mean, in typical, they would be a little bit larger than your core classes, only because when we talk about the class size implications from state statute, it's really addressing core classrooms, not necessarily elective classrooms. So the same would be true for art classrooms at the secondary level, career and technical education classrooms, et cetera.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right, so good morning, board. I'm here to share with you about the impact of referendum on vocational programs or career and technical education. And the referendum has had a very large impact over time on expanding access to students to our vocational programs. One way we've been able to do that is by adding additional teaching units. So we currently have 17 teaching units at 15 different schools that are funded through referendum. And that has allowed us to really expand access, especially at the middle school level, to our students. So a big push early on was to expand more health science programs into our middle schools, as we have health science programs in all of our high schools, which we know is a very big need within our community and a growing need nationally to get students into the medical field. And so we needed more programs at the middle school level to feed those. And we've been able to add 5 additional health science programs and on top of the existing ones that we had, which gets more students access and interest into the program and then feed our high school programs. Currently, our goal is to work with our local hospital groups so that we can even incentivize students going beyond that and being able to get right in the workforce and have their additional certifications like an LPN or an RN paid for while they're working. So all of that goes back to access and opportunity at the middle school level for those students. We also added the culinary program at Osceola Middle School, and if you have not been over to Osceola Middle School to check that out, it is an incredible program that feeds the culinary program at Forest High School. I recommend you go when they're trying new wing recipes because they are incredible, and you would not believe that some of those students are in the kitchen for the first time. And with that growth at Osceola Middle, we were able to add an additional culinary teacher at Forest High School, which has, again, expanded access to students in that program. Also, as Board Member Campbell is very well aware, we added a construction program at Lake Weir Middle School, which feeds the construction program at Lake Weir High School. Again, all you have to do is drive out to the west side of Marion County, and you know that construction is in great need here in our county, and we're able to support that through middle school and high school access. So again, a lot of expanded programs and additional units we've added through referendum. We've also been able to develop and expand our career choice academies, in some instances by adding units, and in many instances by providing the necessary funds to develop and purchase the equipment needed to launch those programs. As you are probably aware, career and technical education is a very expensive program to operate in our high schools because it's beyond just simply purchasing textbooks for them. They have to be able to work with and learn the same tools that professionals in their careers use. And like everything with technology, it's constantly updated, and we have to make sure that we keep up with industry standards. And so it's a very expensive process to continue to grow and expand our career and technical programs, and referendum has allowed us to be able to do that. You'll see on this slide here, one of our big pushes this year we've been able to accomplish is upgrading a lot of computers and technology. Again, very expensive to do, but we have a lot of career and technical education programs that rely on access to computers and digital curriculum, and so we've been able to refresh a lot of those this year. Also, again, as we talk about where we're putting our funds, you'll see again here images of some of the programs we've been able to support with access to computers, access to digital curriculum, purchasing flat panels, hover cams. We also budgeted funds this year to launch the new equine academy at North Marion High School. So a lot of ways that we're able to expand our reach to students at the middle school and high school level, getting into vocational programs. On this slide, you'll see here's a list of all the programs that we are currently supporting through referendum funding. So I mentioned health science programs at the middle and high school level, construction, agriculture program. We were able to expand and add an additional agriculture teacher at North Marion High School several years ago, which we know is a very popular and needed program out on that side of town. And we're also able to add into that agricultural biotechnology, which was a branch from the industrial biotechnology program that already existed there. So referendum not only allowed us to add the teaching unit, but also allowed us to take what was an old storage area at North Marion High School and turn it into a really nice laboratory that we could use with our biotechnology program, and clean space included. So lots of ways that we're able to use this, our game simulation, purchasing industry certification, software and equipment for our programs, hospitality tourism, which includes culinary, and of course automotive, which again, another expensive program that we're able to maintain. And here you also see, again, more programs that are supported through referendum, all of our career choice academies that are currently listed, including the new one starting at North Marion High School and equine. We have 3 programs that we expanded at MTI that we were able to add: the Integrated First Responders, Early Childhood, and Welding, which is a very popular program at MTI, and also adding in Apple Swift coding at 2 of our middle schools, which is a great opportunity for our students to learn how to design and build apps that communicate and work with Apple software. So just some really exciting opportunities, and all of that made possible by the referendum funding.
As Mr. Whitehouse stated, the budget for these units, for the vocational units, is 20, but we have 17 actual vocational teachers. We also pay for what we call 3 bus drivers, but it's really those hub bus drivers that you see coming and going between the different schools that bring the students from their school to MTI and back to their home school. Also, purchase services, which could be licensing, and where we're showing capital outlay, that's really just equipment that he mentioned previously. So those are the dollars that we are spending on vocational programs. The total budget for this year is a little over $2 million.
Ms. Boston-Ellis, question, and I'm just asking, I don't know. With any of these vocational classes, are there paras utilizing any of these vocational classes as well?
Not that I'm aware of. I do not believe there are any paras in the secondary schools associated with the vocational program, but I see Brian behind me to correct me if I'm, or Ben.
Yeah, so we don't have any funded through referendum,
Okay.
Chair, for your question, but we do in some of our programs, like the welding program at Denellen High School and the early childhood program at MTI here, and also at Denellen High School. We do need additional just adult support just because of what the nature is that they're working and learning with in those vocational programs. So we do have some paras that do float in and flex into our vocational classes as needed.
So there's a need. There is a possible need in some of those programs. What I'm kind of hearing. Thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank you. Ms. Boston-Ellis, would you, I don't need an accurate, exact number, but could you mentioned over the ad valorem phase, which is about 8 years. Could you give us an idea of what has happened to the overall revenues? I know we're at 700 million plus. It's hard to know exactly, but could you characterize those numbers from, say, 2015 to 2022 in terms of the overall amount of money that we're dealing with?
Are you speaking to the entire budget, which includes all of our funds, restricted and otherwise?
Yes, well, yes. In other words, what we do, you know, what the school district, what their mandate is, what we do, we educate, which is a lot of what we're talking about here, and what has happened. And it's sort of a rhetorical question because I know we've really increased dramatically from 2015 to now, and I'm trying to fit in this 3%, which is sunsetting, compared to 90%, which is what we do for a living, and in the general fund. So in that idea, could you give me some sort of an idea as what the actual dollars were between 2015, the increase?
So for all funds,
Can we please
which,
finish this presentation so we don't veer off and we can just stay focused on that, and then maybe these questions can be addressed, because I think that is a different question than what is being presented at the time. If we can just stay focused.
Can't you come back and answer that question?
That's fine. If she doesn't have the answer now, that's fine. You know, yes, if we are asking questions as we go along, otherwise we get lost in the shuffle. So you know, whenever it's appropriate.
The question that I was asking was pertaining to that particular slide. That's why I asked the question. But
Right.
yeah, Ms. Boston-Ellis, you can address that in a little bit.
pardon
At the
me?
end. You can address his question at the end.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, next I'm here to talk to you a little bit about our media services. So students who read independently have greater reading comprehension, they have greater verbal fluency, and general knowledge than those who don't. So we know that reading is extremely important, and our schools know that too. And so on the slide in front of you are our library and media circulation numbers at our elementary and secondary schools through June 30th, 2021. And so you can see that students are reading books at all levels. Media centers are the hub of actions at most schools, with teachers and students flowing in and out of the media center, looking for books maybe around a particular theme or for a specific author, maybe looking for information on a specific topic, or really maybe just exploring books on something that piques their interest. Whatever the reason, that media specialist and that library media aide is there to assist. These individuals ensure that our students are reading material that matches their interest and matches their need. Referendum funds have helped to restore full-time media specialists at all elementary schools, plus Hillcrest, and the funds have provided for 2 library media aides at the secondary level. These individuals support teachers and students with book selections. They maintain their collections and keep them current, and in many cases, they are managing school-wide literacy programs. Materials and supplies have also been purchased with referendum dollars. This may include physical or digital books, periodicals, or reference materials. School libraries receive $2 per elementary student from referendum dollars. Maintaining a high-quality media center includes weeding through the collection annually and then replenishing with newer library-bound quality books that are engaging and current for our students. And having worked with many media specialists in the past, I know how important that is, and I know how expensive library-bound books are. Referendum dollars ensure that our media centers offer fantastic programming opportunities and foster a love of learning that starts right there in the Media Center.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Beck, I have a quick question about library. And this is regarding Howard Academy. I seem to remember a few years ago that maybe it was in conjunction with Title I, there were some library options in one of the old classrooms, and I'm not sure if that's still going. I was just wondering, in regards to Howard Academy specifically, if that's something that's being considered or could be considered. The community really doesn't have a library that I am aware of, and it's a long way across town to get to one.
So that's a great question, Mrs. Thrower. I don't have the historical knowledge on whether there was a library or some semblance of a library at Howard Academy, although someone else behind me might have that information. But I do believe that that's good information to take back to the team, because you are correct. There's that main public library, and then there are supporting libraries around our community. But again, I think you bring up a very valuable point for that.
Food for thought. Thank you.
As Mrs. Beck stated, the referendum is restoring 15.5 media specialists. The original budget was 15.5. There are some media clerks. When we started out, there were quite a few in the secondary level. They were used in the media system, but we have since begun to attrition those units as well. The salaries and benefits total $190,000, materials $256, and the equipment is $2,100. Again, this was restoring the elementary back, and then additional units were added as we went along.
Okay, well, I didn't need to go too far, because now I'm here to talk a little bit about our art programming. And we know that immersing children in art and music boosts brain power. And subjects like reading, math, and social emotional skills are all positively affected by the study of arts in schools. This slide that you are looking at right here showcases some professional learning that our art teachers had at the beginning of the year. And using referendum funds, elementary art positions have been fully restored to ensure that our elementary students are receiving art instruction on a weekly basis. Currently, 15 teachers and 11 paraprofessionals are funded using referendum dollars. This slide represents and showcases student artwork that was on display at the 9/11 Anniversary Memorial at Veterans Park. This is one of the many examples of artwork being created in our classrooms in our district and then being showcased at a variety of events for our community to enjoy. Materials and supplies in art classrooms around our district have been purchased using referendum dollars. These supplies mostly include consumable supplies, which could include paper, paint, crayons, colored pencils, paintbrushes, oil pastels, clay. The list could go on. Elementary art teachers receive $2 per elementary student, and art teachers at the secondary level receive $25 per student, and this can also include our art, drama, theater, and dance. Additionally, a program specialist to support art and music programming at the elementary and secondary level is funded through referendum dollars. This individual supports special area programming in the area of art and music. That individual delivers ongoing professional learning to staff, works with the community and schools to showcase the arts, writes and implements grants for art and music education in our schools, and supports instruction at the elementary and secondary level.
The only thing that I will add to what Ms. Beck said is that we originally began adding roving art teachers, and we'll see that has been eliminated. But in the place of that, we have increased paraprofessionals in the art for 11 paraprofessionals. So these were added to replace the roving teachers, and these were teachers in addition to the full-time teachers at a particular school. The roving teachers might have 2 schools they visited, depending on the size of the school and the art class. What I'll also add for that is the paras help lower the adult-child ratio in these very active classrooms. Ms. Beck, if you'll come back and talk about music, performing arts.
All right, I get to join you one more time to talk to you a little bit about music. So music is everywhere in our schools, and in fact, the pictures that you see here, these are pictures of our marching bands, and they've had a very busy season around our district with performances at school events and then competitions. Music classrooms at all levels around our district have been working hard, learning new music, learning to sing new songs, and learning new instruments to play. The referendum has enabled elementary music programs to be fully restored at all elementary schools, with currently 15.5 teachers and 11 paraprofessionals being funded using referendum dollars. Music educators have the power to harness music and movement to make a very joyful noise from our students. The following slide showcases musical programs in action in our schools and at community events. The art provides an important contribution to our community, and our students are an important part of that contribution. Materials and supplies have also been purchased using referendum dollars. For many of our teachers, this has been a big help in building and maintaining their music programs. Funds have been used to replace equipment and to purchase additional instruments. Could be anything from maracas, tambourines, shakers, wood blocks. Funds have also been used to purchase things like ORF instruments, hand drums, and modified instruments for our ESE students. Elementary music teachers receive $2 per elementary student, and secondary music teachers receive $25 per student. The goal of special area instruction is to tap into the creative side of our students and to teach them techniques and skills that will then translate to academic performance in the classroom. And I've talked to you about a lot of different subjects today, everything from PE to our library media services to art and music. And all of them that I have talked about today directly tie back to our district strategic plan, which is Goal 1, Student Success. Because there is such a plethora of research that talks about the clear connection between arts education, physical movement, and reading opportunities to increasing academic achievement for our students. Our students benefit from the dollars that have come in from referendum, and our students benefit from the opportunities that we have in our schools.
The only other item that I'd like to add to what Ms. Beck shared with you is that the secondary receive an additional allocation for music programs, so all music programs. The general fund supports the bands at high schools, and some of you may recall that it would be alternating. One high school would get funds for new uniforms one year, and then the next year they would get an allocation and save up till their turn again was to buy uniforms. So that's how we were operating previous to the referendum. But the referendum allows us to not only provide additional fundings to our band, but also to all of the arts. The really fine bands at Westport and our other high schools that are not the marching bands, but like the jazz and the different types of programs. So this allows them funding so they can support those programs, and we think it's a really pretty good thing. So now we will move on. We've talked a lot about the actual activity that goes on in the class during the day. We'll move on to talk about professional development for our teachers.
Good morning. A portion of the referendum funds has been provided to support professional development. The professional learning that these funds directly support is our district-wide mentoring and induction program. This program supports our new and novice teachers in their first 3 years of teaching. This program is designed to grow, support, and mentor our district's newest teachers, providing them the foundation for teaching and learning and for using the Florida Educator Accomplishment Practices, which is set forth as a requirement in the Florida statutes. As part of this program, teachers within their first year of teaching are provided a one-on-one mentor. In Marion County Public Schools, we call those mentors Instruction Talent Developers, or ITDs. These ITDs are site-based and work with their new teacher on a frequent basis to support them in their lesson development and their use of high-quality teaching strategies and practices. On this slide, you can see the numbers from late September, and it shows that we had 172 first-year teachers that were being provided a one-to-one ITD. Today, that number stands at 219. We have our mentors and our ITDs to match that number, and at that time it stood at 172, and today it is at 216. Additionally, our goal is to have a lead ITD at each school that has new teachers. In late September, we had 41 lead mentors, and today we now have 43 schools with our lead mentors. The overall goal of this program is to support our new teachers through professional development and modeling the strong instructional practices needed in today's classrooms. This level of support helps to create an environment where teachers feel comfortable and confident in their role as a teacher. The impact of this mentoring supports our district goal of talent management and retaining high-quality teachers. The second part of the funds that are provided to professional development is actually dedicated to the ongoing professional learning opportunities offered to both new teachers and to their mentors. The growing of these two groups is a high priority for this department and for Marion County Public Schools. The research is clear. By investing in our teachers, we are investing in our students. As Ms. Boston Ellis talks about the budget page, as you notice here, nothing was spent. And that's because this fund helps to support the mentoring program, and those funds are spent at the end of each school year once each mentor completes their role as a mentor and all of their requirements. And then throughout the school year, we also pick up some other use of the funds through the professional development that's provided.
Now we'll move on to the program that was added in the second referendum, and that is school safety.
Good morning. In less than a month, we'll be remembering the tragedy that unfolded at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. The day will be remembered as the deadliest high school shooting in the history of the United States. After this senseless massacre, Florida lawmakers quickly moved to pass a comprehensive bill to address gun violence on school campuses and enhance coordination between school districts and local law enforcement agencies. Part of the bill requires safe school officers at every public and charter school, requires them at every public and charter school. School districts have the discretion to use school resource officers, school safety officers, school guardians, or hired security officers. The School Board of Marion County has chosen to partner with our law enforcement officers locally to place a school resource officer on every campus in Marion County. And we also have 2 at our larger high schools. We currently have 56 SROs, which is a large portion of it is funded by the referendum. 37 school resource officers from Marion County Sheriff's Office cover the unincorporated areas of the schools in Marion County. 18 SROs from the Ocala Police Department cover schools in the city of Ocala, and 1 SRO covers a school in the city of Bellevue. In addition to school safety officers, the state provided districts with some funding to cover physical hardening measures. Following best practices, we're looking at creating a single point of entry by using fences, door buzzers, and cameras, which allow school officials to control pedestrian access. These security measures greatly reduce opportunities for those unauthorized persons to enter onto our campuses without being detected. We currently have 34 schools with fencing, but expect to finish fencing projects at another 3 schools by the end of the 21-22 school year. The funding source isn't paid for by this funding source, or the fencing is not paid for by the referendum, but is a vital part of our district security plan. Security cameras are in 30 schools so far, with 5 schools scheduled to receive cameras by the end of the 21-22 school year. This funding comes from the referendum and will be an ongoing cost as many cameras are approaching their life expectancy. Door buzzers are being used at 17 of our schools, with 11 more schools expected to get buzzers by the end of the 2021 school year. Door buzzers are also funded through the referendum. 2018 was shown to have the most school shootings on record. Coincidentally, this is the same year that Marion County Public Schools experienced a school shooting at one of our local high schools. Although there were no fatalities, it drove home the point that it could happen anywhere and at any time, even in our small community. As we continue to see an increase in violent crimes, suicide, and suicide threats among our students, district and school-based personnel continues to reinforce positive behaviors. District and school board staff recognize the mental and emotional strains that our students are placed on our students and our staff, but the efforts made during these trying times will keep us on track to meet our goal 2 of the strategic plan, which is to provide a safe and positive learning and working environment for all. In this slide here, we want to show you as a visual that the red or orange is what the percentage of schools that we have fenced in with fences or cameras or door buzzers, and the blue is what we have remaining. And this is a visual as we want to get to 100%. It's about preventive, putting in preventing measures, prevention efforts, and threat assessments to catch problems and situations before they arise. If you looked at the news yesterday, you probably saw where Seminole High School had a school shooting. And as you begin to dig deep into these incidents, you see that a lot of it start on social media, start in the community, and sometimes it ends in our schools. We have to make sure that we have things in place, working with our internal as well as external stakeholders to prevent these tragedies from happening in Marion County. Thank you.
As Mr. McFadden indicated, the majority of the funds in the referendum go towards the cost of our SROs. Also, there are some purchases in there for the cameras as well as the door buzzers. Just to put a little bit into perspective about school safety, we do receive an allocation in our general fund for safe schools, but our current SRO cost is in excess of that allocation. So in addition to the SRO costs, we do get some grant dollars for fencing, but also embedded in our general fund now are those, we have a general fund project for fencing, and we also have in the general fund purchases of the door buzzers as well as cameras. Because referendum, we are allowed to spend it on operational costs. If there are no further questions on this presentation, we will move toward trying to address the questions that you had at this time.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Browning?
where do we, are we at that appropriate time that Ms. King was asking for? I don't want to butt in if we've got an agreement to only speak at the end. Are we at the end?
If you have a question, go ahead with your question.
You may want to put slide 2 back up. That may help the conversation in
Correct.
terms of Board Member Browning's question.
Well, I'm just asking, is the timing correct?
If you have, yes. if you have
It
a
is,
question.
okay, good, thank you. Yes, going back to the question on revenues, and it's a general idea of what has taken place in the last 8 years on this, I call it the 97%, which is a general operation.
Hold on, Mr. Brown. Can we go ahead and put that slide back up? I think it was slide 2 or 3 or something like that.
I'm not certain that's.
No, that's not the
Yeah,
general.
I don't need the slide.
Yeah.
It was Ms. Boston Ellis's earlier comments in terms of revenues, and I wanted to get an idea of what has increased along the way. What are we looking at in terms of revenues over the last 8 years in a trend?
So if you are speaking from 2015-16 to the current 2021-22 year,
Yes, ma'am.
you are correct. Our budget is in excess of $700 million. But when we evaluate a revenue stream, we do not include fund balance. So in the 15-16 year, our total revenue was $442 million. In the 21-22 year, the total revenue is $631 million. So that's an increase of approximately $189 million. But what I would draw your attention to is the general fund operating, which is where the majority of the expenses are occurring. The first numbers that I gave you is the total budget, and that includes a lot of restricted funds, such as our grants, our capital projects, food service, and our internal service fund. So when you're really looking at the revenue stream, in my opinion, you would just look at the revenues from year to year. If you look at our general fund revenue in 15-16, that amount was $322 million. The general fund revenue at 21-22 is $368.7 million. And by my math without my calculator, that's an increase of about $45 million between that time. Sometimes it may be misleading to just look at revenue, because even though our revenue includes increases in the base student allocation, there's also strings attached to some of the revenue. An example this year, Mr. Browning, is we were provided about $7 million this year and last year. So that would be a part of that increase, but that went totally towards our teacher salary increase. We have about 31% of our budget that right now is categorically tied to. So it ranges from the reading instruction, transportation, they're just ESC guaranteed, where we receive the funding, and we're so glad to receive it, but it's restricted to what you can do with those dollars. So that's why the referendum has been such a great help to balance not only the requirements of the Department of Education and our state legislators, but also balancing out the needs of our students in Marion County.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Thor?
Yes, thank you. We've been talking a lot today about restoring, art, music, PE, all of those different categories. And I think it's important to the community to be aware that restoring to what? Restoring to pre-recession levels, correct?
Correct.
And that's an important distinction because our whole community, including our school system, was decimated during the Great Recession. On my street, I never saw a foreclosure sign, and then eventually we called it Foreclosure Corner. There was just within, I don't know, maybe 12 houses, 8 of them were in foreclosure. I'd never seen anything like it. And my point to this is that so we restore to pre-recession levels, and then I keep hearing, adding or enhancements, that we've added things along the way in our funding referendum, which thankfully we've had the money to do, but I'm not sure that the word enhance or adding really does justice to everything that's been done. And I'll just spotlight Hillcrest School. For our kids with the most significant special needs prior to the Great Recession and after the Great Recession, Hillcrest did not have a music teacher. Hillcrest did not have an art teacher. Hillcrest did not have a media specialist. And keeping in mind that a lot of our kids there are nonverbal, to have the opportunity to express themselves through art and music and visual media, can that really be called an enhancement? I would characterize that as a necessity. But yet it was the funding referendum that gave us the opportunity, to do this. And then I think eventually a couple of those positions were put into our general fund, if my memory serves. But the great news about it is that it was the referendum that sort of catalyzed thinking, this type of thinking. And our music teacher that was added, that was Diego Fuentes, and he ended up being our teacher of the year. So that was a pretty good return on investment when it comes to kids. And so I think about necessity as far as equity, and in our school system, equity has everything to do with opportunity, and that's it. So I just wanted to make that point. I was going to say it while we were still talking about library and art and music, but then we moved on. And I thought, well, maybe the end of the conversation would be the time to drive that point home, because as we have evolved, our needs have evolved. And I think that the school safety piece is huge. I don't think anyone can dispute that we want our schools, to be safe. And that takes money. And some of it we get, but some of it we don't. And our mandates and our challenges keep coming. And I feel like what I'm hearing is that even with all of the generous state funding, even with the generous federal funding and allocations and grants, there are still some pretty huge holes that this community recognized were very important to fill and continue to fill, because that's the true meaning of putting kids first. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thor. Ms. King?
Ms. Boston-Ellis, could you speak to the 14 million also that has just, from like the HOPE grants and the McCabe grants? I know we touched on it a little bit a couple weeks ago. Can you just discuss that a little bit more or remind us what
Are you
that
talking
looks like?
about the federal dollars that we've received?
The federal, well, no, like legislation has imposed like now, like HOPE, not, I call them grants. You know, when we have the McKay scholarship or the HOPE. Can you talk about the funds that we are not, or the revenue we, it looks like it comes here, but then is dispersed. Can you discuss that a little better?
Yes,
For my sake.
I was gonna integrate that into the first response, but I'll be glad to do it now. There are scholarships, first it was McKay, and there was restrictions on those scholarships where a student would have to come to Marion County Public Schools or any public school at least a year, and then they would be eligible to take their funding to a private school. All of those dollars are run through the district, so it pretty much inflates our revenue. So what we do is reserve for what we think those scholarship dollars are going to be. Last year, the scholarships were expanded, Family Empowerment Scholarships. You may be familiar with that, or FES. And that allows a student or their family to take the funding that they earn to a private school. So those dollars, while they show up in our revenue, are actually transferred to a private school on behalf of a student. But we are required to reflect that in our revenue dollars. What is significant about the expansion of the Family Empowerment Scholarships is we went from, say, paying out $5–6 million for family empowerment and the McKay scholarships, to this year, it's up to about $13 million. And the legislative talk is that those scholarships are going to be even expanded more if this passes, to include homeschool students, students that have never been a part of our school system. So that will be reflected in the revenue if it passes. Again, those are dollars that we'll show them on our books, but we will never see those dollars. Whereas with a charter school, we record the revenue, and there's an expense associated with that revenue where we pay out the charter school. So that sort of nets itself out. But with the scholarships, those dollars, we don't even see them, but we have to reflect them in our revenue, if that makes sense, if that answered your question.
That does. I just wanted it to be clear. You know, probably most of us do support school choice, but I think it's important that our community understands that the Marion Public Schools, we are showing that revenue, but just because we are showing that doesn't necessarily mean that we are using that money, that it can be dispersed to other schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member King, for that, because that is definitely needs to be clear in the community that the money does come to us on our budget, but we can't touch it like that for our needs. So thank you for making that point.
And if I may, while I completely understand the conversation and I'm completely in favor of school choice and all of that, oftentimes the reasoning or justification for those students for using those scholarships is because for whatever reason it might be, Marion County Public Schools hasn't met their need. And so the more we're able to actually impact every student every time and ensuring that we are meeting those needs of those students, then those current McKay scholarships may actually come back to us. Those students may come back. So and I'm not, every family makes a different decision as to why they have chosen to take this family empowerment route. So I'm painting with a very broad brush here, but I'm also understanding the need for us to continue to have conversations with those families. Just because they've made that decision this year doesn't mean that we can't bring them back into the school system. So while that number is 13 million this year, it may not always be that number, but those that have chosen to use that opportunity for school choice have made that decision for a reason. So we just need to try to make sure that we're impacting those reasons so that we can hopefully bring those students back.
Thank you. And I think we had some questions that this board came up with at the past work session, and I see them on the slide. Can we go through that?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Are we going to, we do have our 11 o'clock.
Oh.
And we have a quarter for that, so, depending on timing.
Can we get through this part before 11?
Yes, sir.
We'll adjourn at 5 till 11.
Okay. So question number one was look at the budget and what are we able to absorb into our general fund budget or other budgets? And it's a two-pronged answer here. First, I wanted you to be able to see what the referendum budget looks like numerically. And you also have a handout. I use the handouts because I can see it better. But this is slide 33. The total revenue generated this year's $23.6 million. The total budget as of 9/30 was $21,022,950. The point I wanted to bring to your attention here is that salaries and benefits represents 81% of the entire budget for referendum. The other items make up about 19% in the budget, including supplies, equipment, and et cetera. And also, this leads into the next question, but I'll just go ahead and let you know that a half a mil would be half of a mil, and that would be $11,818,179. So this one you may need the handout for slide 34. What you have in front of you is our original budget for the general fund operating, and this is where all of this is based on. Our beginning fund balance was $59.8 million. You will remember when we discussed this beginning fund balance during our budget work sessions, I explained to you the majority of the increase over the estimated ending fund balance was due to vacancies. We had on an average of 150 teachers, vacancies, and another 100 between custodians and bus drivers, and some district level positions. So that's why that fund balance is $59.8 million. Our estimated revenues, $345 million. Our estimated expenditures were $377 million. So we estimated that we would end up with a fund balance, a total of 8%, $27.7 million. You also are aware that we have to reserve for inventory that is purchased but not allocated out to schools or departments yet. We also have to reserve for things like we just talked about a little bit ago, FTE, as well as estimated McKay scholarships and other prior period adjustments to our FTE. We are required by law to have a 3% reserve, and that is about $10 million. And then our unassigned balance was $9.4 million. So between the unassigned reserve of 3% and the unassigned 2.71%, we have a 5.71 unassigned fund balance. What we have shared with you in the past is that although the 3% is the minimum required by Department of Education, if we go below that, we have to report to the Department of Education and tell them how we are going to increase that. If it goes below 2%, we have to actually make budget cuts. So we always want to stay way ahead of that because of the things that are occurring in our economy, whether or not it's COVID or the economy of Florida. We have to be versatile for that. So our auditors request that we have between 5 to 7% in unassigned fund balance, but the credit rating agencies think we should have double-digit fund balance. So we go with in the middle, 5 to 7%. That is what we are going to project. I want to also remind you that we have to have a balanced budget. Not like the federal government, we have to have a balanced budget, and that is your requirement as board members. You have to submit a balanced budget. So simply put, if we take the original budget and overlay the expenditures that are referendum, same beginning fund balance, same revenue, the same expenditures, and all I did was add the expenditures that are budgeted for referendum. So now we are at a 1.94% fund balance to the total of $6.6 million. Again, we have to reserve for those items unexpected and also the 3%. So now our unassigned is a negative 3.8%. So we are at a negative 0.38% in terms of fund balance, and that is how it would look if we did the full millage. Question number 2 had to do with a half mill. What would that look like? That's on your attachment slide 36. If you go down to the bottom, as you can see, I increased the expenditures by a half mil, and that was $10.5 million. And after reserving for those estimates that we think are, we're gonna need, we end up with a positive fund balance on the unassigned, but it is at 2.70, definitely less. The only note that I would like to add to this is we know that because of the vacancies we have currently, our fund balance will grow. What it will be, we can only guess or do our best financial guess. But the bottom line is, if we create a staffing plan, as a steward of these dollars, I have to create a budget that reflects the staffing plan. And so while our ending fund balance will be a lot larger than $6 million, or in the other instance, we still have to budget based on our staffing plan and our needs. We have had school districts that took aggressive positions, and it took them years to get out of that bad situation. And I know I personally don't want to go back that way. So I'll leave it at that. Do you have any questions on these calculations? Question number 3.
Thank you, Ms. Boston-Ellis, Chair. Okay.
Yes.
So to conclude and to address question 3, we had a lot of conversation about this, and as you saw from reviewing the recent quarterly report to ICROP committee, these are necessary programs. And if we want to fulfill our vision of helping every student succeed by creating those diverse and enriching pathways, we need to invest in our team and our personnel that are closest to our students and provide those opportunities and resources to our students. And I'll be clear to say, I think that when this originated, everyone got it right. The referendum is exactly what we need. The topics, the areas, specify what research supports and what our strategic plan articulates our pathway forward. There was nothing in there that we could say we would take away or change. Every one of these was evaluated. And we said, we can't do that. That's a missing core of our work for our students. And so I leave question 3 with the referendum is spot on and articulates what we need, not what we want, but what we need for our students. And as you all know, and we are all committed to, moving us from the bottom third to the top third in the state for the benefit of our students.
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Ms. Boston-Ellis. Board members, we have a few minutes in the discussion. Mr. Brown, briefly, we have a few minutes before executive session.
Yeah, well, I can hold off till after we adjourn. I mean, it's fine with me. I don't have a problem. It's just an important critically important subject here. All right, I'll just start in then. This is unbelievably helpful to be going through all this, because otherwise, I don't think it would, if we didn't have this sales tax, or not sales tax, property tax issue coming up, I don't think we'd be doing this. This is incredibly important to get all these numbers out and hear what we do as a school district and how we do it. I want to dwell on the 97%, and the 97%, and I'm using that figure as a 3% difference on our revenue. The sales, the property tax sunsets, and I want to be sure that we don't get dependent on having a property tax in order to have 3% make possible the 97%. I like a 10% improvement in terms of how we spend that $700 million. That's really the key. And then how we utilize our talent within the district to get the most out of what we do spend is incredibly important. At 10% as a businessman, that can always, especially with these like consent agendas, for example, that just fly through, I think that if we discuss each one of those and really beat them up, we can get double this tax idea. I think we can, and I'd like to explore that with the board. I don't want to see us become dependent on this if we're going to really become dependent on this, because if we do, then it is not valid that it sunsets in 4 years. If we're dependent on it, then that's the name of the game, and we can't function. I see most of what I've been presented today as residing within the 97%. Our actual budget, the $700 million, which has increased, I haven't done the math from Ms. Boston Ellis's number, but the 180 million increase far outweighs the 23 million, 24 million that might be gained with property tax. And I'll end with the idea that property tax is a tax incredibly heavy on the poor, because property, everyone lives in a home. And in a home, if you have rental homes and you get a tax increase, it goes to the bottom line, which is what's paid in rents by our least economically endowed folks, the poorest people we have. So I'm against poverty. I mean, my whole life I've pushed against poverty. And I like wealth. So as we grow as a prosperous area and we follow the governor and the legislature in trying to reduce taxes, if we could find our revenue in stewardship, I would just be elated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Browning. At this time, we need to recess for an attorney-client session. We're going to recess for the attorney-client session, claim number 1041711, style MD, a minor by and through their natural parent and a guardian, SFV, the School Board of Marion County. So we're going to recess at 11:55 a.m. and then we will 10:57 a.m. to reconvene immediately following that session. Meeting recessed at 10:57.
All right, test 1, 2. Can you hear me? Test, 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 test. How high do you have it up, Katie? Okay, bring up his slider more. Test, 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 test. All right, so where are you at now? Because that's about on the edge of ringing. Okay, so how about if you're at, say, right above 0 at 2 there? Test 1, 2, test, 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 test. Go to 0. Test, 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 test. 1, 2, 1, 2. Test 1, 2, test 1, 2. Okay, go up to 5. Test 1, 2, test, test, test. Okay, so right there, that's your limit right there. So leave it, hold it right there. He tends to lean back. Yeah. Which, that's the problem. You can't bring it up past that 5, because if you do, even though he's not talking, it's going to lean back. Try to bring them all up to where you can hear them. Yeah. All right, test 1, 2, 1, 2, test, test, test. Do you have Mr. Cummings up as well? Okay, so bring his down, and then you should have the headroom for her. Bring him down. All right. Test, 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 test. Oh, no, it's on.
We're reconvening our meeting at 11:40 a.m. After a brief recess, we will continue our discussion on the referendum. Board members, if you have any questions or for the record. Thank you. Board members. Any other comments from the board members concerning the referendum? There being none, any public comment?
Chairman, good morning. My name is Bob Schmidt. Hopefully I can master this mic a little bit better than I did last time. So with Barry, adjust to the okay. Thank you. Marion County, call this the Marion County miracle. Twice, Marion County taxpayers have responded to the call for the 1 mil tax. Morning, quality. Am I getting through? Are you hearing me?
No, it's going in and out.
First, Kevin, is he not doing it right or something? Because it's breaking up here.
It's going in and out.
It breaks up. It goes in and out.
Test, test, test.
Just step back for a second, Mr. Smith.
Try it now. Okay, how's this? Better? I can hear myself, so I know that you can hear me.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay.
And Mr.
So-
Schmidt, I'll restart the balance of your time now, so you're fine.
So a majority of this morning's discussions were about how we spent the money, where we spent the money, how much money there was to spend. But what I didn't hear were the quantitative discussions about how effective has that money been, measuring specifically how have the programs impacted the metrics schools and students are assessed, okay? That's number one. Number two, the methodology that we're proposing to go forward with puts this quadrennial risk at these valuable programs. I don't think anybody's questioning the value of these programs. I heard the passion this morning for everybody, and there is. So I heard. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Better?
Yes.
We hear
Okay.
you.
So I heard the passion this morning in everybody's presentations about the value about that, okay? But for us to sit there and take these valuable programs and put into these programs kind of seems insane. My proposal would be that you would consider taking that risk out of these programs and putting it into the budget. Protect those programs, protect those students, protect the staff that you've hired so that they don't have to be subject to this 4-year risk of being laid off because the voters have completely rebelled and rejected this funding. That's the second point. Third point is that I did note this morning that management reserves are critical. I, for decades, have had to live with management reserve. So I think that having that management reserve gets us over those times. I heard that double digits was better for bond funds and whatnot, but I don't know what double digits mean, whether it's 10% or 99%, but at some point, you know, we got to figure that out, and it's a good thing to have. So I would say that probably as the finance director of finance comes through this, probably it's a good thing to figure out what that is so that when it does appear in a budget, people understand it, okay? It's critical need. I have looked at the budgets. I looked at what was posted on the Marion County website. I saw a large number there, not understanding what it was. So a little bit of specificity as to why it's needed is important for people like me looking at it casually, okay? Anyhow, so I would encourage the board to consider making these critical programs a permanent part of a budget someplace and not subject to this quadrennial risk of a voters just rejecting this, okay? So, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Presbitino, do we have anyone else?
Bishop J. David Stockton.
Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me. Bishop Stockton, representing, I don't know what hat I represent today. Representing a parent, a concerned citizen, a pastor in the community leader, several other things, NAACP president. I'm coming today because I want to applaud Marion County Public Schools for the great work it has been able to do and accomplish with referendum dollars. But one of the things I wanted to make sure it's understood is that we can never look at not receiving or not going after dollars, not just referendum dollars, but other dollars also. I sit on several committees and boards around the county, and we're talking about, and I'm hearing about the growth of our city, of our county. I'm hearing about the growth and the influx of some new people that are coming and how we are targeting young families because we're opening up this corridor of work and we're even having meetings about new roads. Well, more people come more children. More children, there's going to be more needs. More needs, there's going to be more money. Even when we hear about today how we have dollars, these dollars, but we're also hearing about how we have voids. We still need more staff. We still need more paras. We still need more school bus drivers. We still need work on some of our antiquated buildings that we have. And as I learned and I heard Mr. Smith, and I even asked the question out in the hallway, you know, we always see this big number that the school board has allocated, but I have not heard how those dollars are earmarked for certain things. So yes, we might have $700 million or so that comes through our school board, but so much of that money is entitled somewhere else that we cannot touch. And then we have all of these great needs in our general budget. I think there's like $500 million worth of capital improvements that our properties need so that we can have equitable schools, that we can have schools that are not only safe, but then these schools also have to be supplied with materials and staff and things of that nature. So it's not just a referendum that we should be, I don't think we should ever question, should there be a school board referendum on the books? I've lived in cities where there's a referendum every time because schools are needed. And then also, we're putting out the quality student that we're going to want to hire one day. So we should always be not only looking for the referendum, but looking for other avenues to, as a person who's always trying to raise dollars for different things because I'm part of a growing organization, I'm looking for multiple streams to bring in dollars. It's not just about being a good steward, because being a good steward is one great thing, but if your need is more than what you're bringing in, you still have to look for external dollars. So I want to ask that this school board continue to support the referendum, continue to grow, and continue to become better than we've been.
Thank you, Bishop Stockton.
Barbara Brooks.
I'm Barbara J. Brooks, 1636 Southwest
Dr.
31st
Brooks,
Ave.
Dr. Brooks, pull the mic down so Bishop
short.
left it high for you.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's still morning. I come before you in support of placing the tax referendum on the upcoming election ballot. The tax dollars from the one meal tax referendum is important for the education of students. I am a member of the Independent Citizens Referendum Oversight Committee, ICROP, and I'm also the Education Committee Chairperson for the NAACP Marion County branch. The ACROP has visited Marion County Public Schools to see the tax money in action. Tax dollars are being utilized as mandated for art, music, PE, vocational programs, media specialists, reduced class size, professional development of teachers, and security at the schools. To vote against this new ad valorem will set the district back, and equally important, it will be detrimental to our students. I have talked with teachers who report more paraprofessionals are needed, especially at the primary grade levels. It is imperative for learning advancement, small class size is maintained, and paraprofessionals are in the classrooms to aid students in the learning process. It was not too long ago before the tax referendum when teachers of art, music, PE, and media specialists rotated among several schools to provide students with vital learning experiences. Vocational programs, professional development programs for teachers, and security measures have expanded in the Marion County Public Schools. Let's continue the momentum in our school system. Do not put programs and services in jeopardy of losing funding when temporary funds have been depleted. There are groups in the community opposing the referendum. I would ask this board to review the facts. Vote as a consensus to place the one meal tax referendum on the upcoming election ballot. Time is of the essence, as there are several steps to make this happen. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks.
Ms. Ira Bethea. Sorry.
Ari Bethay.
Ira Bethea. I apologize. Ira Bethea.
He left.
He left. Mr. Richard Howard Sr.
He's gone too.
Ms. Barbara Fidos.
It's your time, Ms. Fidos.
Good morning. You know, in a perfect world, we would not need to be having these conversations. In a perfect world, there would be adequate funding for our public schools in Marion County and throughout the state of Florida. That is not the case, and it has not been the case for any number of years. The voters have spoken in two successive elections in terms of approving a referendum for our public schools. By a significant majority the first go-around, and by a significant majority in the second go-around, which we're currently in. In that perfect world, our legislature would be sensitive to what the actual needs of our public education system is in the various counties throughout Florida. And we see that in other counties throughout the state that have had to effect similar referendums and funding sources for these vital programs. And they're not only enhancement programs, as Council Member, School Board Member Thrower so articulated earlier today. These are necessities for the education of our children. And we as a community have come together and said, by our vote, that this is essential and urgent for us to continue to fund this. And the last 2 years have been extraordinary in so many different ways that perhaps, you know, going forward in a perfect world, we would have been able to wean our way off or find alternative sources of funding and revenues. But the pandemic precluded that in so many ways. So again, the necessity of moving this forward, and again, you are putting it to the will of the voters and are saying to them, please approve this one more time. And that is appropriate. So you are bringing that forward in an equitable manner to say to the voters of this community, please, here is our need, here is the transparency of that need in terms of the advisory council and the astute reports that have been created over the full course of the last 8 years. So again, I would urge that we in the civic community, as community members, work diligently with all of our partners to say why this is essential to move this forward on the ballot in 2022. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Ms. Vargas. Ms. Presbitino, any more?
That is it, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for all of the public comment that we received this morning. And I'm sure it was helpful to all of the board members in hearing the public comment. You guys know how I feel about this. I believe that it's time for us to move forward with it, and as well to push to put it on the ballot. We know that this referendum is not a, let me say it this way. The referendum to me is not a district wish list. It's more of a district necessity list, and that we have to do the things that we need to do to narrow that gulf that has been widened because of recession, because of different mandates, state and federal mandates that have come down to us. And I just feel that this is the right time, that we need to move forward, and I'm ready to put this on, move forward to getting on the ballot and to go to the next level of this. So I think our questions have all been answered, and there's no need to kick the can down the road any further. Anybody?
Who wants to talk next?
Just go down the line, I guess.
Okay, go ahead.
Such a hard time. I agree with Mr. Cummings. I believe a couple weeks ago, we both understand and realize that how important it is that we at least give the voters a chance to put this on the ballot. I am still unwavering in my opinion that this referendum needs to go on the ballot. Many essential programs were discussed today that our schools have had the past 8 years because of the referendum, and it's safe schools. If you would have told me 8 years ago that we would need an SRO in every one of our schools and that it would be mandated because of gun violence in our schools, I wouldn't have believed you. But that is a reality now. Just yesterday, as was mentioned, in Seminole County in Florida, a student carried a gun and shot another student. 4 years ago, I think in May, some of us board members were at First Baptist Church consoling children that were in a school where a student got shot. So that's our reality with just safe schools alone. Reading and literacy, that's the key. Every one of our students need to learn to read and have access to reading. So that is important, which brings me to the media center. It's important what I say. It's heartbreaking when a teacher cannot bring her students to a media center to check out books because it's closed, because nobody's in there to man it. Art, music, that's extremely important. You're talking about the brain of the student. You know, they can use both brains, and it helps them with math and analyzing and predicting. There's so many reasons why those are important. PE for our students, that is extremely important. And if anyone's had an opportunity to teach PE, it's different than teaching curriculum. It doesn't even compare, and we need that expertise in there. Vocation, we recognize and realize that not every student is going to go to college, and that we need to have viable and great vocational programs, and we have them. I mean, even in middle school it was discussed. We had health and science. I mean, that's really exciting. There was an early education, which, by the way, I know that has a good effect because last week somebody who thought they wanted to choose a different career than education decided they wanted to come back, and because of high school, she took her para test and she could go have opportunity to come right back into it. So that's another thing that's even benefiting our schools and our community. Paraprofessionals are invaluable too. They assist teachers constantly, every day, whether it's in the classroom, in the hallways, when students come into the schools, on the buses, in the cafeterias. Goes on how important our paras are. Retaining certified teachers, necessary. We all know that for a successful district, teachers are key in the education for our students. And last year, it was great that Governor DeSantis looked at beginning teacher salaries. That was awesome, and I am grateful for that. But let's be realistic, it left our district in a bind too, because our veteran teachers did not get the raise that they so deserved because of funds and revenues. And it was tricky last year because there is a pandemic, and we didn't know what that was gonna look like for us. And you know, we still don't even really truly know what it looks like, and it is 2022, and you know, it's just, I wouldn't have believed that we'd be fighting a virus and gun violence when I first took office. The district has done an excellent job with the Independent Citizens Committee, the ICROC Committee. They oversight to make sure that every dollar that our community entrusted us with appropriately. That is what we did right also. I think I stand exactly where I did a few weeks ago. I wish that every one of you could understand the importance of every one of these programs and exactly how school rate, how by us not even allowing our voters to, if they would like to keep these programs or enhance these programs, I think we should at least put that on the ballot and let our voters decide. Poverty, education is the key out of poverty. And unfortunately, we students that live in poverty, and it was mentioned that, you know, to pay in their rent taxes and stuff. But I would say that every parent that is living in poverty would pay get their students educated so they can have the best education ever. And I'm just gonna end with that, and I'm curious and would really appreciate to see where my other board members stand.
Thank you, Ms. King. Vice Chair?
So we've heard wonderful presentation today, and thank you to all the staff that took the time out to be here. I completely agree that all of these programs are vital and necessary to educating a well-rounded and successful student. Since the last work session that we held, I've taken a lot of time to think about the questions that we asked, and I received responses back on several questions that I also had either personally, one-on-one, or via email, or just asking questions. First of all, let me address the original question I had of reimagining. And when I take a look at the language of the original referendum and what we potentially would be putting on the ballot again, we've heard presentation today about basically all of those things and how we're meeting those. So just for the public, I want to reiterate what those are, that we would be asking for a 1 mil ad valorem millage for necessary operating expenses, including safe schools, reading, physical education, art, music, library media, and vocational programs, and meeting class size requirements, and retaining state-certified teachers and paraprofessionals with the oversight of these expenditures by an independent Citizens Financial Oversight Committee. I've never doubted that the Oversight Committee has done an amazing job of ensuring that we have been good stewards of the resources that the voters gave us. And this was a referendum that voters approved. A couple of things that I've thought about additionally, and somewhat to a little bit of what Board Member Browning was sort of alluding to, where the budget looked in pre-referendum days and what those revenues look like and how they look like now. What I'll say to that is that that board at that time that chose to go the route of the referendum was handling and dealing with the decisions that had been made and the decisions that had been inherited from previous boards that made the decision to remove some of these programs because of budgeting issues. So budget, we only have a certain amount of revenue. So I also want to stress that that's something we're taught. Florida School Board Association does a wonderful job in teaching us in the Finance Forum that there are only a certain number of ways that school boards can have revenue. And sales tax, unfortunately, in Marion County is not one because our county commission takes that one. And if we were to try to approach them to do that, we'd have to wait a couple of years. But the only other way that we have the ability to raise additional revenue, and again, that $1 million as we have right now, it limits us. We can't use those for capital expenditures and so forth. So there are only certain amount of ways that the school board and our school district can actually bring in revenue. And one of those is the $1 million. So a lot of the conversation we had today is around restoring and we've restored these programs. And when Nancy Thrower, Board Member Thrower brought that up as well, that we heard the word restoration quite a bit. And the reason that the referendum has restored those programs that I also would say are incredibly valuable and imperative for our students is because the board that originally chose to put the referendum was inheriting the decision of a previous board that had eliminated or changed those positions because of budgeting. So I hope I'm not talking in circles there, but it's an inherited decision based on previous boards and the decisions. It's a math issue, frankly, and how previous boards had worked the budget. And so this referendum has restored the programs that are vital, the programs that are necessary, and the programs that are imperative to student success. With all of that being said, I will liken this decision to actually Senator Baxley. He has this decision that he's said recently about a couple of things I've asked him about that the legislature is going to be considering. And he says, put it out to the voters. Put it out to the voters and let them decide. And they'll decide at the ballot box if this referendum needs to come back to the school system. So where I stood 2 weeks ago, different place I stand today. I stand in the position that we can put this out as a ballot initiative to the voters and let them decide. I have entertained in my mind still that it's possible that we could still do the good work that needs to be done in all of this programming with a $500,000, even with the information that we've received today. I think that it is possible. Property tax values and so forth, and what a $500,000 looks like today is different than what a $500,000 looked like 8 years ago. A $500,000 today looks kind of similar to what $1 million looked like then. However, I understand inflation, et cetera, and some of those things. But I am going to say that I will move forward as this board member in support of putting a ballot referendum to the voters and let the voters decide. And it will be up to the community and those in the community to help, for lack of a better term, sell it. And those community members that spoke today in favor of this in comments, it will be on those folks and others who have helped pass this and help educate the voters on the need and the necessity to ensure that these programs continue to move forward. And the final thing that I'll say, I probably already said this is the final thing, but this really is the final thing, is that while we have been receiving all of these dollars, and I had used terms of absorbing these positions into our general operating budget, and while that could be done at any point, I suppose, then what would the ICROC committee have said if all of those dollars that we were bringing in weren't being utilized the way that we said we were going to use them? If we were absorbing all of those positions and not using this referendum the way that we said we would, then what? Then we would have all of this money that we weren't using the way we told the voters that we would. So while it's possible that if for some reason the voters choose not to, or this board chooses not to put it on the ballot, but if we do put it on the ballot and the voters choose not to approve it, then it's possible that we could try to do that absorption of those positions. However, with a referendum and a revenue issue and it being a math issue, at this point, I would be in favor of at least letting the voters decide.
Thank you, Vice Chair Campbell. Mr. Browning.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, I'm just very, very pleased at all of the information that's come forward and all the discussion, because I believe that this is the answer, is discussion and pondering various options. And I'd like to see, personally, I'd like to see a lot more of this level of analysis on every 3% that we go after. It would be enormous. Prior to getting too deep into that, I did want to make a general comment that something that is critically important at Stanton-Wearsdale, it's off the subject, but at Stanton-Wearsdale, we are making progress. So folks can be aware that we're making progress on the safety issues out in that area, and the superintendent's working with the county government. So I just wanted to pass that along, that we are making headway in that area. And going back to the sales tax, to the ad valorem tax, I'm not really in favor of extra sales taxes, by the way, you can probably tell, but the ad valorem tax, I am strongly in the belief, I truly believe that our answer lies in the 98%, in the 98% budget that we have and the increases we have experienced over the last years. If I'm doing the math correctly, this 180,000 increase that we're getting, that's coming along on an annual basis is enormous. And I truly believe that if we really want to light this candle, we really want to back with dollars all of these efforts that we've seen presented today, that the way to do it is in stewardship steps, like you would do in a normal business. You buy better, you reduce costs, and you increase value. And that's the way you actually proceed in a non-zero sum operation. I despise zero sum, where the biggest guy takes all they can take, and it's a competition for a set amount of money, and you come to a zero. There's a zero amount left at the end. I believe in creating wealth. Creating wealth is something that's taken place in Florida And it's the governor, the legislature, we just started this session. They're attempting to reduce taxes and to benefit by the wonderful growth that we have. Now there you begin to really light the candle, really make things happen. This $700 million, and that's probably on the light side, but my is that you strive for 10%. That isn't much, or even cut that in half. That's 5%. That's almost double what we're focused so heavily on, and that is just absolutely doable. I see budget item after budget item, sometimes 5, maybe even 6 or 7 come through, and they're in a consent agenda and not reasoned out like this. If you take those and you put them together, it's absolutely incredible the amount of good you can do in terms of reducing costs. If you're selling cars, you lower the cost, you increase the value, and you have really, really happy customers and successful operations. I'm not in a position, I'm not convinced that this is really in the interest of the school district to dwell so much on 3%. I'm somewhat shocked that we would. Now, make the argument that's been made several times that it needs to go to the voters, that voters need to decide always. That's the best answer, is voters decide. Technically, how we get there, what we present, for this board member, I am very, very dedicated to improving the revenue side with stewardship, with better buying, better utilization of resources. I've looked at a couple of different departments, not to single out departments, but if you have like unlimited growth, you can, and then it becomes almost like you're breaking someone's rice bowl if you don't just keep making it bigger and bigger. The way government tends to grow. So I would like to see, last week we were talking about the idea of hiring from within. I would like to see more utilization, especially with para individuals and what we've done with buses, of allowing people to move around. And if we are heavy in an area where circumstances have changed, where it's not necessarily important to be spending the dollars there, that we transfer those dollars into, and we keep this in a general fund so it stays in focus. So we focus on the 100%, not on a 3%. So I'm not convinced that this needs to be our focus or our recommendation. Now, whether it goes to the voters or not, I only have a small part to say in that. But for my part, I am saying go in that direction, that we focus heavily more and we utilize those dollars that have come forward to us, this 180 million. That's over $1 billion just over these 2 referendums. So I'm not at that point. I'm not going to say that I can't get there, because I know we're going to be debating this on an ongoing basis until those that it's dropping out a little bit. Yeah, I'll try and stay close to it. Up until these dates, what I call the drop dead dates. So I'm not at the position to make a final decision, but I'm not in favor at this time of going forward with this property tax.
Thank you. Member Thrower.
fiscal responsibility, return on investment. Those are the two things that I am focused on in trying to do what's best for each and every child. In terms of what happened previously, just a very brief timeline. The funding referendum was renewed in 2018, November of 2018. A couple of other important things happened. The voters also chose in November of 2018 to task this board with appointing our first superintendent. In the fall of 2019, when school grades came out after the renewal of the funding referendum, we had increased our student performance by raising our school grade from a C to a B. I asked about the half mil to see if that would do it in terms of fiscal responsibility. But it's clear to me that we would be threatening our reserves. And our bond rating is very important. And I remember at the height of the recession, our bond rating fell because of the fiscal position that we were in. And now that has since come back up, but I don't think we're back quite yet at pre-recession days. And feel free to correct me if I'm mistaken, Ms. Boston Ellis. Is that true? Okay. So that's something that continues to concern me, because a strong bond rating puts us in a much better financial position. I needed to be convinced of the need to ask our voters to renew this funding referendum another time, because it's a best practice for school board members once a consensus is reached, and that's the direction that we're going to go, for all board members to be united on it, so that when we bring the case to the community, we're sharing a united voice. We're also obligated as board members through our own policy, our code of ethics, and our bylaws, initiatives and programs that foster student success. And so I would say that having this funding referendum has definitely resulted in better schools. We heard today about our vocational career and technical education programs, and how expensive they are. Well, I remember the time when those programs were decimated. I know is this better? Okay. And I'm of the opinion, and I think is proven by facts, that not every student in Marion County schools is on a traditional college-bound track. So would we really be meeting our obligation as board members to not be supporting programs like this? I don't think so. And it concerns me very much that this is a funding source that could sunset every 4 years and not be renewed. Because through my experience and also through what I heard today and through the presentations that we get usually quarterly from the ICROC, our budget discussions, all of this gets discussed multiple times during the year. So that gives me a lot of information that I need to make the best decision for me and by extension, our school systems. Safe schools also includes safe buses. We have lost a lot of bus drivers and a lot of bus aides due to internal staff movement. In other words, they have resigned from transportation and are now paraprofessionals, teachers, homeschool liaisons, doing other really important and productive things in the district. But the fact remains that we're still having trouble getting our kids to school on time. And so one of my suggestions for the board to consider would be, in terms of safe schools, the umbrella of safe schools for funding, which we heard today that even with appropriations, generous appropriations from the state and even with grants, that doesn't cover the whole cost of even our SROs, let alone school hardening. So to me, I think this referendum would be very important to help plug that gap of getting more bus aides on our buses. I hear two things, and it's number one and number one: money and discipline on our buses. So if we can come up with a way to fund, then I'm all about it. We didn't vote in, well, the voters voted in the $15 an hour minimum wage. So we have that we have to cover and face. And also thinking about, is there any school employee, considering what they're tasked to do, that should only be getting paid minimum wage? It's another thing we have to think about and discuss. So fiscal responsibility, return on investment, community conversation. We have citizens in our community that think that our ICROC members are elected, and they're not. They're appointed. Each board member gets to appoint two and an alternate. We also have an upcoming leadership academy, and we're not using taxpayer dollars to fund it. If you really want to know more about Marion County Public Schools and the budget and how things work, you can sign up and pay what is a pretty nominal cost for all you'll learn to get that information. The final thing is that school funding and school finance, we have an award-winning finance department for decades. We go through, I think it's more than 30 audits, different audits every year. So there's no slush fund anywhere. No one's sitting here, and the only way that we're personally benefiting from having this referendum is the return on investment of our kids. And as far as trying to save money everywhere we can, I see those deductive change orders come across where we're getting money back, and I love seeing those. I see that we piggyback on contracts a lot with other districts to increase our buying power. There's always going to be great suggestions coming from everywhere, hopefully including board members, to how to cut costs and so we can continue to redirect the money where it always needs to go, which is for students. Another great example of that is we had a free social emotional learning curriculum, Sanford Harmony. Well, once the layers of that onion got peeled back, there were a lot of concerns. So sometimes free or cheap isn't always better, but it cost us a lot of money to buy the social emotional learning curriculum that really is more appropriate for character development for kids. And remembering that was close to $400,000, I think. So from free to $400,000, I was still fiscally responsible. So there's a lot here. And as a board member, when I have concerns about or things that are going to be on the consent agenda, because they are ticket items, but it's not routine. It doesn't mean that they haven't been discussed. It doesn't mean they haven't been evaluated, by our superintendent in charge of the day-to-day operation of the school district. So it only makes sense to me that we, as each individual board member, would be adhering to our own policy, which simply states a board member who withdraws a consent agenda item that will be placed on the regular agenda is urged to contact the relevant MCPS staff member to allow preparation to answer the school board member's concerns. And I would add to that in advance of the board meeting, so that you come to the table with an informed mind, a well-formed opinion, and give our people that work so hard on a daily basis to be fiscally responsible, to give us return on investment, to do what's best for each and every child, the opportunity to educate each and every one of us sitting here on the nuances of all of that, because there's plenty of them that have nothing to do with financially benefiting personally, other than what's doing the very best we can for Marion County Public Schools. So in closing, I will say, based on everything I just said, that there are some things that can't be quantified. Art, music, we know how good that is for the left brain, the right brain kids. So I guess maybe that it can be proven by research too. There isn't anything that we're looking at in terms of the funding referendum that has not directly benefited children. And I do believe, as a board member, that that's exactly why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Thrower. So we've heard everybody's given their opinion on this. Where we're at, Attorney Powers, is that we need to figure out if we're going to go forward or not. And from what I've heard, for the record, I heard myself, I heard Ms. King, I heard Vice Chair Campbell, and I heard Ms. Thrower say that we need to move forward. Am I incorrect in what I heard?
You're correct. And if we consensus to move forward, it would be where everyone agrees, regardless of though they may have some questions or are not completely on board with it, that everyone, even if they hold their nose to do it, would go forward and say, we're giving consensus to move forward. However, it's not a majority vote factor. However, we don't really need consensus. What we need is I can place it on an agenda item so that I can bring proposed language. Now, and then the board can, by majority vote, go forward or not if it chooses. So consensus to move forward in something that requires a significant amount of work is simply a matter of making sure that staff is appropriately directed in order to be able to do that work. So, you know, if there's any discussion regarding whether or not we have actual consensus, that's fine. If not, I'll bring it forward for majority vote.
I believe that we have to put it on the agenda for a vote. And I'm going to ask that we move forward with putting it on the agenda.
Right. And what I will do is I will prepare proposed language from an earlier resolution. Then at that point, I'll place it on an agenda. At that point, board members can express their dissent or assent to what the particular language should be. Motions, if made, can be amended in order to ensure that the outcome of what we actually send forward is in keeping with what is required for board action. And of course, we don't take formal action at work sessions. That's one of the reasons, for the public's knowledge, we don't vote on these things here. So, so that concludes what I would need to do for this particular item, unless any board member has any discussion or anything that they wish to direct in my direction.
So for clarity, we're moving forward with the initiative to vote on putting it on the ballot. We're not clear on the language that would be on the ballot.
Right, and this will obviously be, by necessity, a discussion item. This will be something that
Correct.
we will, you know, that we will have an opportunity to discuss further, because I will be taking the language that we have, given that there's not any, at this point, specific directive to alter any language. I'll take the language that we have from the current and previous resolution, bring that forward, and allow board members to discuss in keeping with an agenda and decide based on a vote what they wish to do.
Thank you. Vice Chair Campbell, then Mr. Browning.
Yes, just for clarity, I'm looking at the timeline that we looked at in the previous work session. And just for understanding, my understanding is that once this board, if we reach that and vote to move forward, then not only is that during that vote on a school board agenda where public comment is additional, obviously a part of that session, but it also then goes to the county commission and is also an agenda item on the county commission's meeting. So there's additional opportunity for public comment there as well. So just for community clarity and transparency, the buck doesn't stop with us on this conversation. Ultimately, the buck will stop with the voters if the county commission says, yes, move forward with this going on to the ballot. So at least that was my understanding. I want to make sure that I was correct in my thoughts on that. Okay.
You are correct. You are correct. Mr. Browning?
Yes, thank you. So I had February as a date. We were calling it a drop dead date. February 17th, I believe it was. Maybe it's 18th. It's my understanding, just for clarity, it's my understanding that we do not need a motion for you to get started, and that what we are doing here today is polling the board, and then the chair has the ability to request that you go forward. Is that pretty accurate?
None of that is accurate.
That is not, okay.
No.
Could you describe it as to what we're doing here today? I want to make sure that my position is not that it is a no for going forward at this time, and just clearly. And so
Sure.
If it's not a vote, that's fine, but I just want to make sure that I am not included in a consensus, but I do respect the majority for certain.
This is,
Right.
in work sessions, we don't vote.
Right.
In work
There's
sessions-
not a motion or a vote that is made during work sessions. So that's not something, the first part of your question was, is there, a motion to be made regarding moving forward or not? Typically what happens when the board convenes is that if there is consensus for us to move forward on an item that requires staff input, research, or directive, that discuss what that directive would be so that staff is guided in what their actions need to be in order to prepare. And then if it is something that is going to require some significant initial outlay of time or resources by staff in order to take the first step, then that is typically something that the board announces that it has consensus to do. That prevents staff from going too far down one direction and then stopping. Now, at this point, at our last session, there was already a request overall to have a number of questions answered, and that's what was brought here today. So to that degree of staff time, resources, and allotment, that's already been done. So now at this point, what remains is for me as the attorney to bring forward the language from the prior resolution, which of course means that's not significant amounts of stuff that I have to redraft or go back into, deep mining this in order to bring it to the board. I simply have to get it up on an agenda. And then at that point, the board can vote on it. Now, second part of your question was, am I polling the board? No, I don't poll the board, and we're not going to poll the board during a work session. What happens is that the board is having an opportunity for input and discussion of the matter at a work session in order to express what their thoughts are and also any questions that they might have regarding that. Now, in some situations, we may need consensus to go forward, particularly if there's some expenditure or something like that. And again, that's not what we're dealing with here. And formal action by vote can only happen at a school board meeting, not at a work session. So in conclusion, the final part of that I wanted to make clear was that, that when it comes to how we proceed forward, this is a discussion item. This is not something that is going to be placed on a consent agenda simply for a motion, vote, and second. Likewise, it would be inappropriate while discussing a matter largely nebulous like this one at this point, it would be inappropriate for one board member to say, I don't want us to consider it further, whoever that board member is. And so it would be only appropriate for us to then bring it to a vote at an agenda or at a school board meeting. Otherwise, any member of any board could kill an item simply by saying, I don't want to discuss it further, or I bring it forward for a vote. So it'll be brought forward for a vote, and at that point then it will be an agenda item that will actually be formalized. So if that answers your question, and I stand ready to answer any more.
It does answer my question, thank you.
So Mr. Brown, you have the opportunity to duly note any dissension or?
Yes, yeah, I appreciate that, Chair. I appreciate that, and that's just for clarity. That's it. This is such a well thought out and well presented subject that I think the clarity is incredibly important that we have. So thank you, sir.
And as this goes forward, when it is on the agenda for discussion, for a vote, as Vice Chair said, there will be opportunity for public comment. If it passes and it goes to the County Commission, there'll also be, again, opportunity for public. Ultimately, if it goes beyond that and it does get on the ballot, ultimately, the ultimate public comment would be Election Day. So this is not something that we're ramming down anybody's throat or trying to force feed to anyone. This is something that the voters will make the decision on. Ultimately, they'll make the decision on. Superintendent, did you have something to say? Okay. All right. All right, so we're moving forward. With that being said, board comments and concerns. Ms. Presbitino, anything?
No, sir.
Wait a minute, I think I do have something additional before we do that. I need to recognize our attorney, Jeremy Powers.
Board members, I am notifying you that Attorney Mark Levitt, or his designee, of the Allen, Norton & Blue law firm has informed me that advice is needed regarding claim number 1097936, styled TCS, and the School Board of Marion County, Florida. Pursuant to Section 286.011 Florida statutes known as the Government in the Sunshine Act, on behalf of Attorney Levitt, I'm requesting an attorney-client session with the board for the purpose of discussing the evaluation and/or compromise of said claim. I have asked the board's clerk to cause reasonable public notice of the time and date of this attorney-client session and the names of the persons attending to be published. It is suggested that the attorney-client session be held at 11 a.m. during a recess of the February 17th, 2022 administrative briefing and work session scheduled. As required by this statute, only the following individuals will be present: Eric Cummings, Board Chair; Allison Campbell, Vice Chair; Nancy Thrush; Don Browning, School Board Member; Kelly King, School Board Member; Superintendent Diane Gullit; Power, Board Attorney Esquire or designee of the Allen, Norton & Blue. Continue to have cutouts there. I'm going to start back and repeat from where I was because I need to make sure that's all on the record. As required by this statute, only the following individuals will be present: Eric Cummings, Board Chair; Allison Campbell, Vice Chair; Nancy Thrower, School Board Member, Don Browning, School Board Member, Kelly King, School Board Member, Superintendent Diane Gullit, Jeremy Powers, School Board Attorney, Mark Levitt, Esquire, or designee of the Allen, Norton, and Blue Law Firm. I have asked a court reporter to record the session, also as required by statute. Her notes will be fully transcribed and filed with the clerk of the school board. Upon the conclusion of any litigation and/or settlement of all claims arising out of this incident, the transcript will be made public record.
I recommend the board hold an attorney-client session pursuant to Section 286.011 Florida statutes to discuss a pending claim. If there are no objections, the attorney-client session should occur during a recess of the February 17th, 2022 administrative briefing and work session starting at 11 o'clock a.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard. Okay. Now we'll get back to board comments. Attorney Powers, anything else?
Nothing else from legal, sir.
Okay. Superintendent.
Thank you, Chair. The only question I have is an item for clarification for the February 17th work session. Is it the board's desire to keep the 1 mil referendum discussion as an item for discussion?
No. I don't think we have anything else to discuss.
I like keeping it as an item if there's consensus, or rather if there's a majority.
I don't know that there's necessity for us to have it as a work session agenda item because we'll be having extensive discussion potentially during the actual vote at the school board meeting when additional public comment will be heard at that time. For the purpose of the work session and all the things we had to move off of this work session so that we could have this robust discussion today, I would be in favor of removing it from upcoming work session agendas, just so whatever additional discussion needs to occur among the board can happen the day we vote. That's how I feel.
Ms. King, Ms. Thora?
I agree 100% with Board Member Campbell. Any further questions I may have, I can direct to Dr. Gullit, and she'll get me to the right department in advance of our vote. And anything else I can listen to a public comment and cover during my comments. And I know we have a lot off of today's agenda, so got to keep the flow going.
Thank you. Ms. King?
I'm good without it.
And I agree. I don't think we need to add it to, we could remove it from that agenda. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot of discussion between now. If there's questions that we need to have, I suggest that we contact the superintendent and her staff and let them give questions. It's on the agenda. We'll have the what we need to make a decision. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Brown, I'm going to start with you this morning. Closing comments.
I don't have any further comments, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Thora?
I'm good, thank you.
Ms. King?
I just would like to tell Ms. Boston Ellis and your team, thank you for a great presentation this morning. You guys did a great job presenting. And I would also like to thank the majority of the board for realizing how important this is and to allow our community to vote this up or down. Thank you.
Vice Chair?
I don't think I have anything today. Thank you.
Okay, well, y'all wanted me to talk. I guess that's what it was. And in closing, again, I'm grateful for the community coming out and giving their input. Everyone's opinion and input in regards to this referendum is valuable, and we heard everything that was said, and I just appreciate the discussion. I appreciate our board members understanding the significance of what we're asking our voters. I don't ever want to take anything away from our voters being able to make a decision, and I believe that going forward that we're doing the right thing and putting it in the hands of our voters. They spoke overwhelmingly last time. I think 70% they spoke, and so that's you don't silence that many people and not give them an opportunity to speak again. So I appreciate our board members. I do want to say a couple good things. On Saturday night, we were at the gala, the Golden Apple Gala. Congratulations to Ms. Leah Bender, who is at Westport High School's Golden Apple teacher, our Marion County's Golden Apple teacher. So I do want to say that. That was a beautiful event, and we celebrate her, all of our finalists, all those who were able to participate in that. And then this past weekend, very important to me and to many of us, is that it was the MLK holiday weekend, and it was a wonderful, wonderful weekend of activities, and I was so grateful to see so many of our staff there. I was so gracious to see at the breakfast, we had a wonderful speaker that took us back to elementary school. He went to Pete the Cat, one of my favorite books, and if you did not hear his story on Pete the Cat, it was just inspiring. Many of us know the story of Pete the Cat when he steps in some red stuff and some blue stuff and some mud, and how he chose to not let anything hinder his song. So I want to encourage our staff members. I want to encourage our district folk and all of the staff in our district, because sometimes in my travels, I hear different things. I hear how they may have a rough day or whatever, things aren't going as well. But I want to remind them about Pete the Cat. No matter what's going on, keep on stepping and keep on singing your song. And I guarantee you can overcome, that you won't let your situation dictate you. But it was good, again, for the prayer breakfast. It was awesome. Bishop Stockton was the ecumenical speaker on Sunday afternoon and did a good job. And then on Monday morning, most of us were marching. So I'm grateful to our board members that were able to come, and our superintendent. I think it's important that the community see that we support those type of initiatives, those things, especially when we all know what Dr. King stood for, and it was great to see us as the ones that were there as a united front, because it really makes a difference to the community to see that we believe in a lot of the principles that were there. Also, I'm just looking at my notes. Also, last night here in this room, MTI held their open house concerning their programs that they have here. It was attended, and we want to encourage those attendants. Also this Saturday, I think at the Paddock Mall, MTI will also have a booth there, an information booth about the programs and activities that are here at MTI. And if you don't know, it's like a unkept secret. This place has some wonderful programs that are here, and as we're rebranding, retooling, revisioning this campus and the programs here, we want to encourage our parents, our students, to think of MTI as a viable option going forward. Mr. Kelly, Mike Kelly, and the assistant principal, Mr. Ronald Jones, are excited about what opportunities that they have here for our students and our community. And they both told me to let you know that if you are interested in having a tour of the facilities and the programs here at MTI, they are willing to walk you around the campus and give you some firsthand input about what's going on here. So I'm grateful for that. And I was able to see some of the kids that were here last night, and it was just good to see that not only do we stress academic success, but we're stressing success in vocation and success in careers. And one of the young men, I won't say his name, but he was just so enthusiastic. He came out with his chef hat on and his apron, and he had a Cracker Barrel apron on, and he was just excited to be able to be here participating in that. And they were here as student ambassadors for those who are looking at the programs here. So We have some wonderful things going on in Marion County. We also learned today that some of these wonderful things that are going on in Marion County are because of direct support from the referendum. And I'm looking forward to where we're going to go. I'm looking forward to the things that we're going to do, and I'm looking forward to making more successful students and successful citizens in Marion County. And with that being said, I don't have anything else, and we will adjourn our meeting today at 12:54 p.m.